So welcome to the competition briefing for SBRI Clean Air. If I could just do a bit of housekeeping. There's a few people who haven't arrived yet, so we'll just ask if there's any gaps in between. If you just shuffle down, then if anybody does enter the room, it makes it a bit easier for them to sit in and less disruption through the day. So yeah, if you just fill those gaps. So usual housekeeping, phones, if you could keep your phones on silent, that'd be great. If you need the toilet, you just go out of here and then go left. And if there's no expected fire drills, but if there is a fire, then go right, and the stairs are just the other side of the lift, and we'll meet outside. Lunch today will be on the second floor, and there's going to be one-to-ones as well with Kevin and Caroline, and they will take place around the same time as lunch in here. And if you want one of those one-to-ones to discuss your proposal, ask any questions, then you can sign up on the first break to do that. And then you might not have noticed, but on the wall outside, there's some company profiles. So some people have put up a brief description about themselves and what they're doing. So if you want to add one of those, then there's also some templates, and you can go and quickly write up. And there's even a little fast photo printer, so they can put your photo up on the wall, if you'd like that. Okay, so quickly go through what we're going to be doing today and the KTN. So. This is the agenda. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the KTN and introduce the day. Then Caroline is going to give an overview of the programme itself. Kevin will go through the scope of the competition that I'm sure you're all excited to hear about. We'll have some Q&As, networking breaks, and a little bit about the application process. We're going to have some lunch, and then there's an opportunity to pitch. So I think there's 60 to 100 people today. In the room, and this is an opportunity for you to hear from some of those and maybe get some ideas that you hadn't thought about for the competition itself before closing remarks. So plenty of opportunity to network today, meet some other people and come up with some new ideas. So who are the KTN? If you don't know about us, Innovate UK fund competitions with the research councils, and then there's a series of organisations that help to connect you in there and work with the funding. So at Innovate UK, we work with organisations to access the funding, connect with other people and accelerate innovation. We have about 100 plus sector experts across every industry. We provide free and confidential advice, and that expertise can also help on reviewing applications. At the end, we can't write an application for you, but we can review it, and that will be appreciated if it was a couple of weeks or a week or so before the application deadline, but that can be a useful service as well for people who either haven't written applications or just want a second viewpoint. One thing that we do as well that might be of interest, because a lot of academics and businesses in the room today, is knowledge transfer partnerships. This is a three-way relationship between a business, university and an associate, who is usually somebody who is a postgraduate or a graduate, and it's a funded activity. You still have to put some money in as the three-party agreement, but I think it's a very reduced rate to provide a person to work on a new area or topic that you might want in your business. And this has proved very successful, and they've increased the amount of funding into that area. So we're on about clean air today, but there has been a series of funding already put into this sector by the government, 321 million, 303 projects. So if you want to have some examples of people who have won funding in this space and see what those projects look like, there's a lot out there to look from, and this is sort of a continuation of those themes. So other funding that's out there at the moment, you can always apply to the open competition, or mostly always apply. That does close today, but just an example, have a look when that opens again. BEIS Hydrogen Supply Programme, IDP 15 all around the integration of electric vehicle components and hydrogen vehicles, and ISF Faraday Battery Challenge. So there's other things open, always have a look out there, you never know quite what might fit for you. So I'm going to introduce Caroline now, and she's going to give an overview of the programme.
Okay, good morning everybody, thank you for coming. I'm Caroline Colshaw, I'm the Head of Research for Environment and Health at the Natural Environment Research Council, and I'm here today to talk about the Clean Air Analysis and Solutions Programme, which is the programme that this funding competition sits under, and just give you a bit of kind of background about where the funding is coming from and kind of overarching what we're looking for. Okay, so as Ryan mentioned, Innovate UK and the research councils came together in April of this year under a new body, UK Research and Innovation. It brings together the 7 research councils, Innovate UK and Research England, who fund universities, to create the new body for research and innovation and provide a strong and unified voice. Together we have a £6 billion budget, and the intention is that working together we'll expand the frontiers of knowledge and create stronger economies, better jobs and healthier and more resilient societies. The research councils and Innovate UK came together under UK Research and Innovation this year in response to the nurse review of the research councils that happened a few years ago. And in 2016, as part of this, we were awarded an uplift in research and innovation funding of £4.7 billion. And this funding was awarded to UKRI under what we call the collective funds, and one of these collective funds is called the Strategic Priorities Fund. So this is a fund that's been designed by UKRI and BEIS together to respond to the recommendations in the nurse review that we need to be working together in a more interdisciplinary way. So the Strategic Priorities Fund is a new fund that has 3 different pillars of activity. So it wants to promote and drive forward multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary research and innovation. It wants to enable the UK system to be able to respond to national strategic priorities. So some of the examples here are artificial intelligence and synthetic biology. And it also wants to support research and innovation programmes that are aligned with government department R&D priorities. So this is a way for us to work together with government departments to fund strategic priorities. So it was announced in the beginning of October that UKRI, under the Strategic Priorities Fund, was going to support a programme on clean air research and innovation. And the overarching aim of this programme is about developing actions to reduce the health impacts of air pollution on the most vulnerable parts of society whilst pursuing clean growth strategies. So that's the kind of the high-level message of what we're trying to achieve with the Clean Air programme. This is the group of delivery partners that are involved in the research programme. So I'm from the Natural Environment Research Council, NERC, and we are leading the overall programme on behalf of UKRI. But as you can see, we have 5 of the UKRI councils. We're also working with the Met Office and the National Physical Laboratory, who are funded directly from BEIS. And we've also got the support of 3 government departments, DEFRA, Department of Health and Social Care and Department for Transport in the design of the programme. So why did we want to fund some research on clean air and innovation? Well, the motivation was driven by a report that was published a few years ago that sets out that air pollution in the UK is responsible for around 40,000 early deaths and has significant costs to health services and businesses in terms of lost workforce productivity. And you might say, well, why now? This isn't new. But we feel that the UK is entering a transformative period in air pollution now. There's lots of efforts going on to change, become aware of our emissions and reduce them. And so now is a good time to look forward and say, well, what are the problems of the future and what can we do now to avoid them? So additional timeliness factors are around DEFRA's view is that all the easy wins have been implemented now. So we are having to ask hard questions and to look for more difficult solutions. And also the UK Clean Air Strategy is about to be published, and the intention is that the research that we support under this research programme will help to drive forward and implement that strategy. So the intended outcomes of the programme, quite high level. We want to improve our ability to predict future changes in sources, emissions and atmospheric processes. So I'm sure you all recognise that the emissions dynamics are changing, the complex processes and transformations in the atmosphere of the particulate matter and the gases means that the models that we're using today might not be appropriate for the future. The second pillar is around predicting exposure and health impacts of vulnerable groups. So we want to look at more personalised exposures, understand who the vulnerable groups are, which components of air pollution are the most dangerous ones that we should be thinking about. Most relevant to this event today is the third pillar, which is about catalysing innovation in technology, business models and policy best practice. This is the real solutions pillar of the programme. And then finally, bringing all the different activities that the councils and Innovate UK and the government departments fund together. The aim is to bring coherence to UK research and policy. So some of the planned activities that we are thinking about at the moment. We were awarded £19.6 million over 3 years, starting this year, 2018-19. So the first activity, Innovate UK were quickest off the blocks to develop this SBRI competition. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And then other activities that we've got in planning at the moment is an activity to network and leverage the major investments that UKRI have already made in air quality to start to bring together this multidisciplinary community. The Met Office is going to be leading an activity to develop a systems framework for clean air analysis. So this is about bringing together all the different models along the chain from emissions to impact to be able to provide coherent advice to stakeholders. And then finally, in our current plans, we're going to run a competition to appoint a clean air champion, a visible person to lead and promote this area and bring together all these various different strands of activity. So that's my quick overview of where the funding has come from, and to share with you our kind of overarching vision of where we see this going. So I'll hand over to Kevin now, who'll give you more specific information about this competition. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. It's great to see so many people here today. And looking through the list of the different sort of the mix of companies and academics, it's exactly what we needed to see. So thanks everyone for coming along. I'm Kevin O'Malley. I'm an innovation lead in Innovate UK, but I'm also SBRI lead customer. I'll explain what that is a little bit later on. And I'm here to tell you a little bit more about this competition. And what I'll cover in the next 20 minutes, half hour or so, something about the context of the competition, why we think this is an important area to be focused on, and then to break down those focus areas to sort of unpack them a little bit. To talk to you about SBRI, what that is, how it works, then to tell you specifically how we've structured this competition, what its size is and the elements of it. To talk to you about your proposal, what it is that we might expect to see in a successful proposal. Tell you what we don't want to see, which bits we would consider to be out of scope. And just a few final notes to encourage you to come up with the best proposals possible. So you heard from Caroline, who's much more of an expert in this area than I am, about air quality and the challenges. I think that if you've come to this event, you are already very familiar with. Air quality has an enormous impact on health in the UK and around the world, linked to cancer, asthma, all sorts of lung and breathing difficulties, heart disease, increasingly to issues around dementia and mental health. And the government has, as Caroline suggested, invested significantly in this and in tackling some of the, I suppose, the most burning issues around combustion engines, and there's been reasonable impact in that. But the reason that we're here today is because that's not the whole picture. There are other components to the to air pollution that need to be addressed, and as those interventions around the combustion engine and the pollution created by that begin to take effect, these other components of poor air quality, of air pollution, become more significant. And that's why we have decided to focus our competition in these areas around non-road vehicle pollution. So this is the shape of the competition that we want to create. So we want to see new products brought forward, new services brought forward and demonstrated that address the harmful emissions from road vehicle brake and tyre wear, or wear on the road surface caused by those road vehicles. Non-road mobile machinery that's used in construction specifically. There's a whole range of different bits of machinery here which would be valid, but just as an example, things like excavators, bulldozers, cranes, compressors. And the final component is this. In this is the secondary diesel engines used on transport refrigeration units in order to chill your delivery from Waitrose or wherever you might shop. So put your hands up if you are aware of SBRI, what it is, and okay, that's a little under half, so that this is going to make my job a bit harder. Put your hand up again if you've bid for an SBRI competition before. Wow, 3 people. Okay, 4. Right. So I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time trying to explain what this is, because it's quite a complicated but really useful process for getting innovation into the public sector. The first thing is the name really doesn't help to explain what this is. SBRI is a small business research initiative. It doesn't just apply to small business. It isn't really about research, it's about development, and it's not an initiative, it's a process. So, great start, but what it is about is addressing public sector challenges by linking up innovation in the private sector, and how that helps is that the public sector really fundamentally understands their challenges, whereas the private sector fundamentally understands their innovation and their technologies, but the two often don't quite meet properly, and this is an opportunity for that to happen. And as part of this process, and why Innovate UK in particular is a real advocate and supporter of this process, is it is about commercialising these ideas. This isn't a research initiative, this is about developing a product which will then grow a business, which will then benefit UK PLC. And through this process, we give the opportunity for businesses with innovative, creative ideas to partner with a problem, an issue owner, in order to build that product, which hopefully will have that commercial impact for them, but also will resolve the issue that we're presenting today. So that's my 1-minute pitch on what SBRI is. I'm sure people will have questions later, but I can pick them up then. These are some of the features of SBRI. One of the perhaps more attractive features is that this isn't a grant. This is a development contract, and therefore is 100% funded. Now that might sound like an unusual arrangement, but there is a implementation of EU law which allows us to fund a business 100% in order to develop these ideas without falling foul of state aid. So this is a UK implementation of that pre-commercial procurement process. And essentially the contract is for that R&D service. Within the SBRI, we're looking only to let the contract to one lead supplier, and that lead supplier then manages the relationships with anybody that they need to involve in that development process. I mean, we accept that in innovation there's perhaps not one company that owns the solution, and the requirement would be to work with a number of different subcontracting organisations, which is perfectly fine and well understood. And it might be particularly in the context of this particular competition that you might want to form a relationship with an academic organisation. This isn't mandated, but I'm just suggesting it might be something you want to do in order to understand the latest thinking. Equally, within this, you might want to understand how, if you were successful in gaining further funding through this competition, how you might test your prototype. So what environment and context would you test it in, and does that require a relationship with a testing environment or with a local authority? Or, again, I'm not mandating any of this. This is just a suggestion of the things you might think about in terms of creating a successful consortia for this particular call. The IP that's created through this process stays with the commercial organisation, which should be good news for you, because then we want to see that then commercialised. We want to see this product develop and this business grow as a result of it. There are components of that might the public sector might want to have some rights to use some of that IP in the future, but that's all set out within the contract. The eligibility is kept very straightforward and simple. It's open to any organisations, all organisations. But I suppose the critical component of that is that this is about commercialising the product. Therefore, you have to have a route to market. You have to have a suitable way of commercialising the idea at the end of the programme. I think that's all I wanted to say on that. So this is the shape of the competition that we've structured, and this is often how SBRIs will work in different phases, which allows us to learn from phase one in our development of phase two. So within phase one, which is a feasibility phase, we'd be looking to fund up to 6 projects, 6 proposals, of a maximum size of £50,000, and that is inclusive of VAT. And we would want that feasibility phase to run for a maximum of 3 months. And as a result of that feasibility phase, you will produce a end of phase report, which is then evaluated, considered, and from those successful 6 projects in phase one, we would look to fund 3 into a second phase, which is a prototype development and testing phase, much more involved, but that's reflected in the fact that that could take up to 18 months, and the funding for that would be up to 1.5 million, inclusive of that, for each of those 3 successful phase 2 projects. So this is some direction or advice about what we would be looking to see from your proposal. It should certainly be innovative. I mean, that we're not looking to fund something that already exists, or to fund scale up at this stage. This is about bringing something new to the market, a new solution. But it has to be practical and deliverable, and that it will be evaluated on that aspect. But there is a balance between innovation and whether something is practical, so that will all be taken into account. Affordability of the end product needs to be considered. We would be looking for this to be made commercially available. We want this to be a product that is available and that people would look to purchase and use in the future, because then that's how we tackle the issues that we built this competition around. And we want you to demonstrate to us within your proposal at this stage how you might test in the real world, what it is that you want to evaluate, who you would work with in order to test in a real world or in a realistic testing environment as part of phase 2. And the sorts of applications that we would value or encourage, we would certainly be looking for those which have a clear plan to commercialisation. That's very much what SBRI is about. It's about creating a product. And no matter what your organisation is, if you're an academic organisation, you may be involved in research in other components, but you need to have that commercialisation plan and strong route to market. We would value that connection to relevant academic research. We would see that as being useful, both to inform the product, but also to, as a result of the activities in developing the product within the SBRI process, to inform again the academic context about your experiences. Scalability and replicability are really important. If you want to have a commercial market for the product, it has to scale. It's got to be replicable. And part of that sort of informing further academic study or further investment, being able to gather and analyse the data as you go forward, that would be useful for us to see. It was something that we would value in your applications. So the things that we're not looking to see, the sorts of projects that aren't to be funded within this competition, are those that focus on exhaust emissions of road vehicles. There has been lots of work done on this. There perhaps needs to be more work done, but this isn't the competition for that. It may be that, well, we are certainly interested in the exhaust emissions of the secondary diesel engines of the non-road mobile machinery we've set out, but road vehicles, exhaust emissions, out of scope. And we're not really looking to see how you might remove pollutants after they've been generated, once they're in the air. So we're looking much more for products that are about reducing emissions at source. Any project that's not really addressing the scope, we're not interested in. And any project that has an overall negative effect on the environment is one that I don't think we would support or fund. Just some final notes. The first one's really seems really obvious, but do fill out all of the application form. It's really important. This will be pretty competitive by the looks of the people in the room here. So if you don't fill out all of the application form, you really won't be in with a chance. So again, this is emphasising the fact that we need to see a means, a method of commercialising the product, the solution that you're developing as part of this SBRI. Just a reminder that all of the numbers that you've seen within this presentation and within the brief online include VAT, and your proposal will be evaluated at fair market value. So that's something you should bear in mind when you're putting together your financials. The contract terms and conditions are not negotiable. They are presented to you as part of your application pack. The reason for that is that we need to move really quickly on this. So if the contract terms and conditions aren't something that you're going to be able to readily sign up to, then I would advise that this isn't the competition for you. But they're there for you to see ahead of time. The template is going to be part of your application pack, so evaluate it, look at it, make sure it's something that you're comfortable with before you go ahead with spending time in your application. If you do need some further support after today around questions about scope or how the process works, we do have a business support group who you can contact, and they will be very helpful to you. I would also advocate my friends at KTN as really good support for you in terms of trying to build a consortia if that's what you're looking to do. If you need some additional support in different areas, they will be excellent at helping you to find that right component for your bidding group. And that is all I wanted to say. So thanks for listening. I think now we have quite a long session of questions. If anybody had any questions, please go ahead. Have you got the... We've got a funky microphone somewhere.
Who'd like to go first? Yeah, we throw our microphone, so you have to be paying attention if you want to ask a question. Do you want to go first? You're closest to me. Ready?
Yeah, hi there, Mark Scope Caterpillar. Your scope about not moving emissions elsewhere, what does that mean for sort of electrification projects which essentially move emissions elsewhere? Are they in scope or out of scope?
This might be something I need to have a longer conversation about. Perhaps you don't want to reveal too much about what your idea might be. Book a one-to-one at lunchtime and we'll have a chat about that and see if that's in scope.
Or throw on to the next person if you do.
Here we go.
Couple of questions. Well, can you clarify what you mean by the difference between pollutants getting into the air and not being in scope, and pollutants being prevented from happening in the first place being in scope? I mean, there's clearly two ways to tackle particulate emissions. You either stop them being produced or change the nature of those particulates in some way, make them non-carcinogenic or bigger to fall to the ground or whatever, or you prevent them being released outside of the vehicle envelope by kind of sucking them in and capturing in some way. And is the latter out of scope, are you saying, because they are still produced?
Okay, it's a good question. Yes, in my understanding, the latter is out of scope.
Particulate capture is out of scope.
Particulate capture is out of scope. Okay. Now, I took advice on this from colleagues who work within our sort of specialist air quality team, and I think just to simplify the scope, that's the direction that we decided to take. So it's about not creating them in the first place, not addressing them once they have been created.
Okay, and quick follow-up while I've still got the funky mic. Brian Robinson from the Low Carbon Vehicle Partnership, by the way. On the TRU specifically, and the general topic of demonstrating a test method to demonstrate in-service or real-world simulation effectiveness, these problems don't currently have recognised test procedures, so it's kind of inevitable that the projects themselves will need to develop test procedures in some way, and many people will know we've been funded by Innovate UK to start to develop some TRU test procedures, but they need further work to develop them further. So again, a clarification question of, are you expecting people to just say how they're going to test, or is part of the funding in the second phase development of test procedures?
Funding in the first phase would be much more to develop that testing process. We would expect within your initial bid that you will say, we will test in this environment supported by these partners, for instance. In the feasibility study, I would expect that to be really sort of developed into something which is more of a test plan.
I'll start that one.
Gordon Andrews, Leeds University. Are clean fuels in or out for off-road use? Because they have separate fuel tanks on building sites, so that clean fuels and so on would be 100% clean fuels would be one possibility.
If they reduce the emissions of
Yes.
those, so are we talking about electric or?
I don't know, ethanol, biofuels, 100% biofuels, GTL.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if they reduce emissions before they're created, they would be in scope.
And you've expanded a little bit, and I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but I was asked to ask it. Under off-road, are railways include rail vehicles because they're a major polluter?
No.
They're out.
Not for this competition.
Off-road and off-rail.
Are there any plans for rail?
Oh,
Probably more significant than the off-road.
this I don't know, but
There is a call actually on rail.
All right.
Yeah.
that's good to hear. Yeah, so there's a call at the moment on rail. Thanks for that.
I
I
haven't
should
seen,
put that on mine.
haven't seen that. But there was one other thing that's... oh, yeah, going back to the no collection. I mean, that this may mean you can't do anything about tyre wear. Because the major thing on tyre wear is to collect the particles.
It may be. This is an innovation competition, so
Well,
it may be. It may not be. I don't know. I'm not
If wearless tyres
presupposing.
were available, I'm sure they would have been developed by now.
Well, that's what this opportunity is about.
Oh, right.
Edible tyres, that's the
Okay.
Thank you very much. Let's come over this side. There's people over here. I'm not going to throw it at you. You can launch it next time.
Thank you. Just a question about the construction plant and machinery. Would that apply to plant and machinery it's manufactured for construction but it's not being used in construction? I'm from the ports industry and we use lots of plant and equipment for moving goods, but they are the same as a construction site would use.
We specifically used, or looking at equipment used in construction, because there would be a number of different contexts that we could approach, but just in order to make this manageable and keep the scope reasonable, we've just decided that to focus on used in construction.
Okay.
Someone in front, any question? Just throw it down that way. Go on, you can throw it. Launch it to the guy at the front.
You ready?
Go on.
Good. Carlo Casoldi, Robert Bosch, GmbH. Very practical question. Are we getting this presentation? Is it possible to have this?
I believe so. Yep. Yep.
Yeah? Sorry? Already been sent. Okay, sorry. Great. That was actually my question.
Okay. Jolly good. Does anybody else?
Average rate from Grantry. Just a very quick question. You said all organisations are eligible to apply. Does that also involve startups as well? So a startup enterprise can equally be eligible to apply?
Could be eligible to apply as long as you're a legal entity. So if you have incorporated in some way, then certainly you can apply. I would say in order to significantly increase chances of being successful, I don't think a startup on its own would be successful in this competition because of its scope and size, certainly the phase 2 size. But as part of a consortia, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Tom Harrison, Oak Tech. Is phase 1 mandatory before phase 2?
I'm afraid so, Tom.
No, I don't think that's probably a good idea.
Only those who are successful in phase 1 can be considered for phase 2. And effectively what it will be is, phase 1 is your feasibility study for phase 2, and just gives us a chance to see how realistic those initial ideas that you present can be, how convinced we are with your with your numbers and how robust your consortia is that you create and move through that first feasibility phase.
Just a quick follow-on about the claim structure. Is that on a standard Innovate 3 months in arrears claim structure?
That's it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don Aprify, Enzo Tires. My question is around the consortium development between phase 1 and 2. Is it a requirement or advantageous to have figured out all of the potential members for phase 2 when submitting the phase 1 application, or is that something that is expected to develop as phase 1 is completed?
I think if there was somebody or a component or an activity that you want in your consortia, you would want it in phase 1. You'd want it in your original bid. So, in order to stand the highest chance of being successful, have all the bits aligned for your initial application. Because that's going to be really competitive. If you get through into phase 1 and you run your feasibility study for 3 months, then there's only 6 competing for the last 3 slots, and that's really where I think people are most interested to get through into that second phase where there's £1.5 million worth of investment in development there for you. So get it right up front, and that because otherwise I think you'll struggle with the competition.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hello, Nigel Skellen of Myra. Transport refrigeration units appeared both on your in-scope slide and your out-of-scope slide. Can you clarify what the position is on?
Is it?
Yes.
Yes, but it's saying it's on your in-scope slide, and it's anything that's not a TRU or NRMM on the out-scope slide, so it's fine. You have to read all the words.
Oh, right. So I just confused it the way that I presented it. Yeah.
So it's in.
TRU's definitely in. Yeah. So maybe I have to fix that slide up.
Ready? Quick follow-up. Sorry. How do you select the 3? Because there's various ways of doing it. It strikes me that if all 6 conclude after 3 months that they're feasible, then 3 of them might be actually not really in need of any further public funding. They're so feasible and so viable that they can just get on with it, and you might pick the bottom 3 in that sense, or do you pick the sort of the 3 most feasible, or what's the criteria between 1 and 2?
I suppose we will work that out, and it won't be a decision that is made independently. From Innovate UK's perspective, we are looking to grow a business. We are looking to see a product enter the market that's going to be highly impactful, that's going to have what's going to grow an organisation. So I would certainly be advocating for funding the one with the highest potential, but also the highest impact. For phase 2, Jen, you may help me with this. For phase 2, I think what we will do is we'll structure some sort of collaboration or consortium to come together in order to evaluate the 6, the successful 6, and between us decide who goes forward. As part of the Strategic Priorities Fund programme, the big overarching programme, we have a steering group who I think would be involved in that evaluation. So yes, it's to be decided how we move that forward, but it certainly won't just be my decision.
Okay, so you can't effectively structure the conclusions of your feasibility phase to maximise your chances of being successful in phase 2. That's kind of we'll wait until that's all done and then we'll decide what criteria we're going to apply.
Not at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is a slightly unfair question, but since I'm sure there are more than 6 good ideas in the room, is there scope for, these relatively small pots of funding, is there scope to expand the first phase at all?
No. It's it is as it is.
It's just a huge jump in scale of budget from 1 to 2, and you're taking 6, and then half of those will get funded on the big project. Right?
Part of it is to make this manageable, because this needs to be concluded within a specific time frame, and I think the real impact, the real effect, comes out of the phase 2 projects. So we wanted to make sure that they were substantial enough to really make the step change in the technology and the products available. And phase 1 is effectively writing a feasibility study and a test plan. Hopefully through the bidding process, where we will hopefully receive 50, 60 bids, that's where we'll get the chance to evaluate the very best and make sure that we're only taking forward the ones which are have highest potential.
Is this bid? Well, you mentioned that go-to-market is an important element coming out of phase 2, but are we focusing here on fundamental research or product development?
Not at all. Not at all. This is a development contract, so it links to research in so much as we want the development of something which has some sort of basis for going forward, but this is about making a product and in introducing it to the market after the end of this R&D phase.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think mine's kind of similar, because it's, the biggest challenges we have in construction is the cost and robustness of a lot of these technologies. So if it was a bid to sort of focus on the manufacturability, at these kind of strange volumes that we have in construction, would that be something that would be acceptable, in order to get sort of what known technologies actually into the marketplace?
That doesn't sound like this is right for an SBRI. That sounds a little bit more of a manufacturing process issue than a product innovation issue. But we can chat about that when we one-to-one at lunchtime.
Yeah, I think as we all do now, it's designed for manufacturer, incredibly tightly connected.
Oh, first injury.
Yeah. I've just been looking at the slides going forward. So the competition's open now.
Yeah.
Closes the 19th of January. What sort of start date would you be looking at on that?
I think the start date is published on the brief, and it's gone out of my head for now, but it's rapid.
Yeah.
And that's why I suggested that familiarise yourself with the contract, because that's a contract that we will sign with you, and there will be no amendment to it. It'll go as it is, or it won't go at all.
Right.
But this is the contract that is used in all SBRIs, and this is a well-established process now, and it does benefit business because it allows you to do R&D for nothing.
Yeah.
To what extent is managing the impact of emissions in scope? So you've said you're not allowed to cause emissions elsewhere, but if you've got the same emissions but you manage their timing or you manage their position to minimise the impact on human health, is that in scope?
It's not really about managing the impact on human health, it's about managing the creation of these emissions.
Okay.
So moving them around, I don't think that would be in scope, but I'd be happy to have a further chat with you if you want to do something at lunchtime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Theo Damoulas, Alan Turing Institute for Data Science and AI. Can the product be digital? Can the product be an algorithm? Or does it have to be kind of physical engineering solution?
If you think that you have got a digital product that will prevent emissions, then by all means put together a proposal for that.
Okay. Thanks.
Richard Kemp Harper from Arcola Energy. Is there a weighting for the degree of reduction of emissions? For example, the zero emission technologies compared to reducing the impact of diesel?
I haven't really thought about that. Ryan, you
I mean,
might have a view on that.
If I can expand on that, the case for it is that you can start reducing emissions from diesel. Does that maintain through life? If you start off with a zero-emission technology, your impact is more likely to be maintained.
Ryan, help me out with this.
I would say it depends on the scalability, because you might be able to get the small wins, and then, as Brian just pointed out, on the diesel quite quickly and scale that up, but it might take you years to get the zero emission wins. In reality, you've built a product, but you can't roll it out, so you're not achieving any of those wins. So it's probably taken on a case by case basis. And as Kevin said, if you get 50 applications, then somebody's going to have to run a few sums. I don't think it's a straightforward answer. It's probably one.
Gordon Andrews, Leeds University. You may have said this, I apologise, but in the pollution side, are we just talking about pollution on health, NOx, particulates, or are greenhouse gases in there? What we do should not increase fuel consumption, for example.
This is about emissions, reducing emissions of any sort, whether they be ozone or whether it be particulates.
Is that defined, what it's... So what you said would include greenhouse gases, so fuel economy and braking systems that, for example, that then increase fuel economy or whatever?
I'm not sure I'm really gathering the... Caroline wants to come in, thank God.
Okay, so the scope of the overall programme is focused on air pollutants, so gaseous pollutants and particulate matter that affect health. But what we have said is that we don't want to think about air quality and greenhouse gases in isolation. So from an overall perspective of the programme, we want to develop solutions that solve air quality issues but don't make greenhouse gas problems worse. Does that answer your question?
So issues don't make them worse.
Yeah. Well, if you can solve them in tandem, then great. But don't come up with an air quality solution that causes greenhouse gas problems and vice versa.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just really following up on the impact question, and you said you're looking to maximise impact. Does that entail range of impact? Or does that entail the magnitude of the impact? Because you could have an international dimension impact where this is scalable globally, or it could be a social impact, create a lot of jobs. So when you say impact, do you mean the range of impacts, or do you mean in terms of the highest magnitude of impact?
I would expect that that those sorts of impacts might be better demonstrated through the feasibility study than through your initial application, because that's sort of driving into a bit of detail, and the application form itself is not the longest form in the world. It's kept quite sort of straightforward and simple. Those impacts would be a component of the evaluation of phase 1, I would imagine, as to whether you move into phase 2. So if your solution developed through the feasibility study of phase 1 looks like it would have massive export potential, would create millions of jobs, then that moves you into phase 2. Whereas if you wrote your application now for a technology that doesn't really exist, that you're sort of thinking about doing some development on, and you told me, we'll sell billions of these all over the world and we'll create hundreds of thousands of jobs, that might not be terribly convincing. So I suppose it's a balance of what you can demonstrate and what you can demonstrate now in your application, and by the end of the feasibility study of phase 1, what you can demonstrate then when you've had more time, when you've had that support, when you've built the consortium, in order to really unpack the numbers
So it appears to me then the technology should be further down the technology readiness level if you're applying for phase one. Is that correct?
No, not necessarily. You may have an idea. What it needs to be is something that is practical, that is deliverable within the scope of this project. So I don't imagine that anybody's sitting here as a finished solution, because if they do, this isn't the competition for them. This is a development program. So something that is either an idea, is in development, is on a bench somewhere that somebody's sort of fiddling with, that needs that acceleration to create a product that has that impact.
I guess it should be well evidenced anyway.
Well evidenced is what's going to get you over the line and beat the competition in the first instance.
Thank you.
Cedric Hanson from BOC. With respect, I'd just like to tease out something about affordability, the criteria you mentioned. Clearly for secondary engines, currently they have the benefit of red diesel subsidy. And are you therefore asking us to be competitive at the current level of red diesel price? Or are you looking for a more sort of world diesel price, if you will? Because that's part of the issue, is some of these technologies can't afford clean energy. Yeah,
it's quite a detailed question that I'm not sure I'm exactly the right person to answer that one. I don't. Ryan's not looking at me like he wants to pick it up either. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a difficult one for me to answer right now. But if you
can we chat about that later on?
Come to me later. Give me your details, and I might not be able to answer it today, but I will get back to you with an answer on that.
So, come on. Oh, I was going to ask. Yeah, David May, the University of Lincoln. On the refrigeration project, have you been given any guidance by the likes of the Food Standards Agency on the criteria? Because there's lots of tech out there, but it depends on your criteria as to whether it's likely to work, and therefore those criteria are actually quite important.
Yeah. I haven't had any of that guidance, but I would imagine that in developing your proposal, you might take that into account.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions on the webcast. The first one from JJ is I'm assuming it's a he, wanted to know if this covers housing with regard to gas emissions.
No.
And the second question from Claire Jackson is, would the competition consider expanding the scope to include material handling and warehouse vehicles alongside construction?
I'm afraid that's not something that we're going to be able to do. So, yeah, the scope is the scope.
Hi, Sam Perkins from TBAT Innovation. You've spoken about timescales of phase one to be completed by July 2019. Have you got, apologies if you've mentioned this, but have you got any ideas of timescales for phase two in terms of when you're expecting them to run?
I do, and I've forgotten exactly what they are, but things move really quickly in this competition, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a few months between the end of the first phase and the beginning of the second phase, but it should all be in the online brief. Yeah, so apologies for that, but check the online brief, but I imagine it's just a couple of months transition between the two phases.
Any more questions? Anybody else?
Thank you. Edward O'Connor from Cold River Design. My question is to do with intellectual property and the protection thereof, you could say. So that if an idea were, as you say, on a bench somewhere and under development, and it was the basis upon which the application was made, a fair amount of information about that idea would have to be conveyed to the person assessing the application. That would be the process, obviously. So what kind of safeguards would you have in place so that the information relayed to you, which would be confidential, would not be spread to people who might not treat it in a confidential fashion?
Oh, right. I think that would just be, it's the standard process for Innovate UK. We have evaluators for our assessors for our competitions. They're given loads of different competitions to assess. I don't think there's any specific or particular protections around SBRI. I will have to. I'll have to look at this and let you know precisely what the process is. But
NDAs. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
Ready?
One more. The 3, or at least 3, unsuccessful projects.
Yeah.
Presumably, there's nothing stopping them using their feasibility report as a strengthening mechanism to apply for further calls, open call, IDP 16, whatever. If it's in scope, they can still.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The project isn't dead. It's just not being funded by that second phase of this.
Hopefully, they would go on to further develop the product using either private equity investment or further government investment from a different fund.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not the end of the story.
Presumably overseas as well. They can. They're free to go wherever they like with that feasibility study.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's much easier.
Back again. Again, you may have said this, but are these projects aimed at retrofit, or so you can make an immediate benefit from existing off-road fleet? Or are we talking new products get going, new production that will take 20 years to filter into the market?
I suppose the nature of this process, the SBRI process, is that we try not to preclude any solution. So it's anything that meets the criteria that is in scope.
But surely a project that reduces the emissions now is preferable than one that reduces them in the future.
It may well be.
The problem is now.
It may well be, but there are lots of different factors that have to be taken into account. So I couldn't tell you whether that's the right approach.
Points for that, right?
Well, maybe, but yeah, I don't want to give you the answer right now because I don't know what it is.
This last question.
Right. Hi there, my name is Amol, and just have a validation kind of thing. We are a company which is into the outdoor air pollution segment, but the product that we are talking about is a retrofitment on top of the excavators or the compressors. Does that fit in? A retrofitment, does it fit in with the prospective customer of a construction equipment manufacturer, which would reduce the at source?
It reduces the emissions at source.
At source, yeah. Or the surrounding at source.
It sounds like it would be in scope from that one single sentence.
Right. The second question is, for example, the funds which we are receiving, the £50,000, may not be sufficient at an initial stage. So can we have in our funds as a mixed dialogue? So for example, if the total project cost is exceeding £50,000, we can take a share of it from this and then put in the rest of our money and then take it ahead.
No, the £50,000 for the feasibility study, that's fixed. And
that's right.
So that's 50,000 plus VAT. So
that's right. So can we invest if the project cost is going slightly higher? So can we club it from our pocket and take it ahead, or is it to be fitting in that?
Oh, well, the way that this works is that it's a contract, so you can bid for the contract at whatever value you think. So if you wanted to not to charge for particular components of this piece of work, then that's fine. That's up to you.
So 50,000 would come, and then additionally, if it is required, just to make sure that it is going ahead.
50,000 is the maximum amount that's available for this piece of work.
Correct.
And what you're doing is you're bidding for this contract of work, and you value it in whichever way you want.
Perfect. Thank you. What was the last question? Yeah.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming back. So we're slightly changing the agenda just because we can't move the lunchtime and due to what we've got going on, we should be able to fit everything in. So Innovate UK are going to give some details about the application process. We're then going to have the pitches and then we're going to go for lunch after that at 1:45. So I'll hand over.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So my name is Laura Thomas and I work in the competitions team at Innovate UK, and I'm joined by my colleague Tammy, who's also in the competitions team. So today we're going to run through the application criteria and the process, how to submit your application and what happens afterwards, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So now I'm just going to take you through the competition process and the rules. Kevin might have already touched on some of this morning, but I'm just going to reiterate it for you. So projects can be from a single applicant or they can be collaborative. The project size, including VAT, is up to £50,000, and the anticipated project length for all projects is up to 3 months. You'll find this competition and all of the details on our website. If you haven't had a look already, I'd recommend taking a look. There's plenty of information on there, most of which we'll touch on today, but there are some other bits and pieces on there that you might find useful. So once you've registered for the competition, you'll then be emailed the application form within 48 hours, so 2 days. And I'm going to take you through what the application form looks like now. So the application form itself is split into 12 sections. Please do refer back to the guidance notes for applicants when filling out your application form, as there's much more information in there that I'm going to mention today. So questions 1 to 3 relate to you filling in standard information about your company. So for question 1, you'll need to fill in your project title, your project duration and the contract costs. For question 2, you'll need to give us details of the lead applicant organisation, including the registered company name and the address and the company registration number. And then for question 3, contact details of the project leader. Please also provide details of where you heard about this competition for question 3. For question 4, we ask for a short description of your project, which will be made public. This is mandatory. So you need to provide a summary of the project to be used when that will be publicised if you are successful. This question won't be marked and it doesn't affect the scoring in any way, but we do ask that you don't add any sensitive information in this description, as like I said, it will be published if you're successful. Question 5 is description of the proposed idea or technology. So here you'll need to provide a description of your proposed idea or technology, avoid using unnecessary technical jargon, and be very explicit about how your proposed solution will address the challenge outlined in the competition brief. Don't write yourself out of scope here, and always refer back to the competition brief. And this question allows you to submit 2 A4 pages for appendices. Question 6 is around the technical project summary. So give a short background to the key technical challenges, state what the innovation is and the key technical deliverables. Briefly describe how the challenge will be addressed, and typically here you would also highlight the R&D that will prove the scientific and commercial merit of the project. You'll also need to describe what might be achieved by deploying the innovation to address the technical challenges. Assessors are looking to see that the technical approach is valid and likely to meet the challenge you have set out to address. Question 7 is around current state of the art and the intellectual property. So here, detail other products on the market, describe how novel your proposed project is, including details of any other existing IP and its significance to your freedom to operate, and explain how you use novel concepts, approaches, methodologies, tools, or technologies for this area. Question 8 is split into parts, so it's project plan and methodology and also project management. So for project plan and methodology, this section you need to describe the project plan and detail the major work packages and the key project milestones. You need to give a brief outline plan for phase 2 based on your plan for commercialisation. The plan for phase 1 should be comprehensive, for phase 2 this is only an outline. The emphasis throughout should be on practicality. We're seeking evidence that the technology works, can be made into a viable product, and can achieve the proposed benefits. You'll also need to provide an indication of how any IP which might arise during the project would be handled. And then for project management, you'll need to identify the project management processes that you'll use to ensure that the milestones are achieved in a timely manner, resources will be used appropriately, and you'll be able to exploit your research outputs. In addition, you'll also provide details of the identified risks and mitigated actions. Consider the technical, commercial, environmental risks here. If you're a university, then please include your plans for commercialisation of the results of your project. And you can also provide a Gantt chart to support this question. Question 9 is around the technical team and the expertise. So here you'll need to provide a detailed description of the skills and the expertise and track record of the team, including the relevant knowledge and the skills of each member. And their proportion of their time will be spent on the project. And any relevant commercial and management expertise should also be included. And then moving on to question 10, which is application finances. So here you'll need to provide a breakdown and justification of costs for phase 1. All costs should include VAT. And then also an indication of potential costs involved in participation for phase 2 is also required based on your plan for prototype development, evaluation and commercialisation. Please note that progression to phase 2 is dependent upon successful completion of phase 1 and on phase 2 application and assessment. The costs you state on your phase 2 application form will supersede any indicative costs provided during phase 1. If there is significant use of subcontractors, please explain how these will be used and the costs of each. Assessors are looking to see that your costs are fully justified and appropriate. They should reflect fair market value and profits should not be included. A list of what costs are directly or indirectly incurred can be found in the guidance notes and also discussed on the next slide. So in your application, the cost should cover the following as applicable. Direct costs are costs that are specific to the project that will be charged to the project as the amount actually spent, fully supported by an audit record in justification of a claim. Direct costs could be labour costs, material costs, travel and subsistence, etc. Indirect costs, these should be charged in proportion to the amount of effort deployed on the project. These may include costs of capital employed, learning resources, overheads, etc. An applicant should calculate them using their own cost rates. And then finally, question 11 is commercial potential. So here you'll need to provide details of the clear commercial potential to lead to a marketable product, process or service, and a clear plan to deliver that and the route to market. You'll need to describe the significance of the competitive advantage which this technology affords over existing alternate technologies that can meet the market needs. And then finally, the declaration. So it's essential that the applicant ticks the declaration box or the application will be rejected. The lead applicant is expected to have discussed the application within their own company and any other body whose cooperation will be required to deliver the project. The lead applicant will need to obtain consent from an authorised officer or appropriate signatory who will sign the contract if successful. We'll provide a contract for review. This contract is legally binding and subject to the outcome of this competition. Okay, and then I'll hand over to Tammy, who's going to talk you through the application process.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so once you've submitted your application, it's going to be assessed by 5 independent assessors, taken from industry and academia. Can I put your minds at rest by saying that these all sign NDA agreements and they're all up to date, so you don't have to worry about any IP problems. What you need to do is make sure your application is clear and concise so assessors can understand what you're trying to achieve within your project and they won't need to make any assumptions. So it's always a good idea to get someone independent of your project to actually look over your application before you submit it, just to make sure if there's anything that needs clarifying that they can do, you can sort that out for you before you actually submit your application. So the final question we ask assessors is, would they recommend this project for funding? And so once they've done this, we'll put together the recommendation from the assessors along with your project score, and then that becomes a big rank list of all the applications that we've received. So within this ranking, there'll be some applications which have scored really highly and have been marked in scope, and they'll automatically be put through to funding. Then there'll be some applications which are low scored or marked out of scope, and they won't be funded. And then there'll be the ones that sit in the middle, where we may need a little bit more clarification, or they've got like a middle score, and that's where we'll be taking them through to an assessment panel for consideration on whether it should be going forward. So here's some key dates for you. You're also able to see these on the dates tab on the competition webpage as well, so don't worry. The competition opened yesterday, the 12th of November. You must be registered to apply for this competition by Wednesday the 9th of Jan, which is actually a week before the competition closes, but please do that well before that time. The submission deadline is at noon on Wednesday the 16th of January. Please don't leave it till the last minute. We have to say this on every briefing we do, and it happens so often, and we really don't like chucking you out. But yes, if it's afternoon, then you won't get through, I'm afraid. No, and there's no exceptions to that rule. You'll be notified on Friday the 22nd of February whether you're successful or not, and you'll receive your feedback from the assessors on the 1st of March. So, submitting your application. Right, so the submission process follows 6 easy-to-follow steps. So, register, download, complete, upload, notification, and feedback. So, let's have a look at those in a little bit more detail. So, register. So, if you intend on applying for this competition, you will need to register. As I said, registration closes 1 week prior to the competition closing. So once you've registered, you'll receive an email with a username and password, along with a link to a secure area, as well as a copy of your application form, which has a unique application ID on there. So if you do plan that you'd like to submit more than one application, then that's not a problem. All you need to do is register just the once and then contact our support team, and they'll be able to provide you with extra application forms for your other projects that you intend to submit. So, download. So, when you click the link provided in your email, you'll be taken to this public area where you'll find some standard documents such as finance forms, the standard collaboration agreement, and sample offer letter. So if you log in and download the finance forms, and then you can send them to any partners that you're planning to have to complete. And obviously familiarise yourself with the collaboration agreement and the offer letter, so you know what you can expect to find in those. So once you've completed your application, please check that you're using the correct naming conventions. So make sure that your application number appears in there, and for your appendices it says appendix, obviously the application number, and whatever you want to put on there as well. Make sure the application form is submitted as a Word document, and your appendices are submitted as PDFs. So now that your documents should hopefully be ready to submit and upload, then you log into your secure site, make sure you accept terms and conditions, and click the Upload tab. Basically, all you'll need to do is either select the files from your computer or drag and drop. So it's all really simple and straightforward, and then hit the Upload button. So notifications. So you will receive a notification via email, and if you're successful, then you'll be asked a series of questions, especially to do with viability, financial viability, that is. So you need to make sure that you can respond to those as quickly as possible, and then eventually that means that you'll be able to get your offer letter at the end. So we need to get through all these checks as quickly as possible. So for successful applicants, the offer letter, this is an example of one which is probably terribly because you can't see it at the moment, but we will get a copy of these slides, so don't worry. So there's lots of various sections which include the amount of grant and the conditions you need to meet. So please take a look at the sample offer letter provided, as I said, in the public area, and then you can be able to familiarise yourself with it and know what's going to be expected. So there's a few things that you need to note. So ensure you complete your application form in full. Please don't leave any bits out, because obviously that will really reflect badly with the assessors. And ensure someone else in your team checks it for you, because it's always good to get a second pair of eyes. Any type of organisation, size of organisation as well, are eligible to apply for this competition, as long as they can demonstrate a clear route to market. All contract values must include VAT, and all costs must reflect a fair market value. Contract terms and conditions are non-negotiable, and you must expect to receive queries regarding the due diligence. Okay. Have you got any questions? Yes, sir?
I might be a bit stupid here, but I've got a question on the application finances.
Yep.
We are bidding for a development contract with a value of £50,000. And this goes back to a question raised by the gentleman back here. It's more than likely it will cost us more than £50,000 to do the work that we need to do. But why are we being pushed to go through a standard project or a finance form for that? The second question, referring to the same thing, is that you're asking for a collaboration agreement, but this is based on being a lead supplier. And we then can decide how we interface with any other organisations that we wish to work with as part of this project. So why have we got the requirement of using the collaboration agreement?
Well, it's just something we like to see, that everything's agreed, so there's not going to be an issue somewhere down the line of the project.
Well, that's an issue for us.
Well,
yeah.
When we're supplying the grant, that's where we fit into that.
This is a development contract, not a grant-funded project, as I understand it.
But it relates to government money. I used to work at NERC, sorry Caroline, I used to work at NERC and I know how it works. It's related to confidence, and forgive me, everyone will have confidence in projects, but it's related to confidence in the grant being awarded, being able to be delivered. So if you're saying you're going to have X, Y and Z partners, a collaboration agreement is a prerequisite to confidence, to make sure they're in play and that you are going to be signing up. Because you could say you're going to be working with X, Y and Z, you get the money and X, Y and Z don't want to play.
Yeah, so it's we know there's an agreement in place.
All right, okay. Yeah. And regarding the finances?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
We are bidding for a development contract with a value of £50,000, including VAT. But you're asking us to go through a very detailed analysis of all the cost structure for something which already has it. This is not we will put a bid for £1 million with the expectation we'll get 50 to 70% funding for it. It's 50,000, that's it. I can understand why you may want the 50,000 broken down into various details. But as this gentleman said over here, we're probably going to be spending a lot more than £50,000 to be able to make this work.
Well, we just like to know that we're getting value for money. That's why we like to have a breakdown of costs and where the money's going to and what it's going to be spent on. So these are all the viability checks that we go through once you're told you're successful.
Okay.
Thought you'd have had natural rugby ability, Bob. No, I didn't. Actually, just to follow on from what Bob has just said, if you have this situation that we're all alluding to, where the funding for your feasibility study is £50,000, but you think, for instance, it is going to cost you £100,000 to do it, and so you're underwriting the extra 50,000, do you have to put in your finance form the total cost, the 100,000, and how that's broken down, or would you just do the 50,000 and essentially ignore the fact that that's only half what it's going to cost you as a business?
Just put the 50 in, because
right.
That's what the competition is for.
Yeah. And the question I was going to ask before that one occurred to me, the feasibility study do you have to have in that feasibility study as collaborative partners the collaborative partners that you would envisage being in your phase 2?
It probably would help.
Yeah, just an outline.
I mean, I don't mean referred to. I mean actually as in as part of the grant recipient.
I mean, if you don't feel that they're going to be of use in the feasibility study, then I don't see the point in having them in there. And obviously, when you move over, then I'm sure you'll be able to invite other partners in to the collaboration at that point. But yeah, if there's no benefit to them being in the first phase, then I wouldn't.
Right. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I dare throw it. Can't see him.
Surely got to identify all of the project costs for delivery, and then say that okay, there's 50,000 of it is going to be paid for by.
So would this be for phase 1 and phase 2?
No, phase 1. So if it's over the budget.
No, I mean your 800,000. Would that be for if you did phase 1 and phase 2?
No, I'm just picking a figure and saying it was 100,000, and it's 50,000 in the feasibility grant. Yeah. So the additional 50,000 that is coming in from us, presumably that needs to be demonstrated because the complete project is going to cost 100,000 to deliver, the feasibility project, rather than what you said a minute ago. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe something we'll have to take away because we don't often get people who are asking for a £100,000 project when they're only getting a £50,000 contract. So yeah, it's something we'll take away and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, a quick one about the subcontracts. Are there any sort of requirements on these that they have to be UK entities or European entities or SMEs or anything like that as part of this?
We prefer everything to be based in the UK because obviously we like all the money to be spent in the UK if possible. If you've gone down that route and found that actually it'd be much cheaper to go abroad and they weren't taking up a massive percentage of the project, then that is allowable. But yeah, it's obviously you need to justify why you've gone abroad and what you've seen in the UK to sort of.
But they would be allowable costs. They would justify. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Leading on from that last question with regards to subcontracting, is in standard open grants, for example, there's percentage limits, ceilings and such like, either they're rule of thumb or they're hard. Is there a rule of thumb or hard limit in terms of how much the prime can subcontract out from the contract?
No. I don't think there is in this competition, but I mean, obviously we were asking why is a subcontractor not applying if they were taking a lot of the grant.
Sure.
But there aren't any limits with this competition.
Thank you.
Got another one.
Hi. In terms of phase 2, it says that it's purely for prototyping and development. Can any of that money be used into marketing? Because if you've got a great product, you need to market it somehow to get it out there and commercialise it.
Kevin, do you know? That one?
I'm going to say, in our general competitions, we don't allow any marketing money to be used on marketing.
You spend about exploitation, though. Call it exploitation.
Thank you. Yeah, but one question. The program is going to start ideally from the 1st of March. Are companies taking some efforts from maybe day one today or maybe after in December and so on? There's no expense which we can account for it, but can we demonstrate something in that, because 3 months is a patch that we would have to deliver it across, but we cannot start it in the month of March. Some efforts are going to go be prior hand. So number one question is the amount can the amount be compensated before, or has the amount to be spent between that particular duration? So ideally the amount spent in that particular duration will be accounted and to be mentioned out there, I guess.
Yeah, so you can only claim for costs that are between
those
project
time zones,
duration.
yeah, time zones.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to claim for anything outside of that project
And
duration.
has to be shared on the finance sheet that way.
Yeah.
Yep, thank
exactly,
you.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, am I right in thinking, 3 months is a short duration, and the amount of cash, 50k, is also small. So am I right in thinking that that 3-month study is basically a little bit of work on the feasibility, but really it's the output is composed of a business case plus testing plan, allowing the work that's going to be done in phase 2, which is very much focused on development and getting close to market. Is that correct synopsis?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Cheers, but I don't think anybody's actually got a question. Okay, I think we're on to pitches now. So some people have...
No, we're not.
We're not, sorry? I thought that's what you wanted to do now.
Menti.
Sorry, we've got Menti. We've got some questions to get your phone out to. We've got...
Round of applause for the lady. Okay, so at this point, we're saying goodbye to the people on webcast, Ryan, Ash even. So thank you for joining us online. But for the people in the room, we want to get a bit of feedback from